Welcome back. It's EPL Insights with data provided by Infogol for Gameweek 32 in the Premier League. This week, we'll dig into more drop points for Arsenal as the title race continues to heat up. Down at the bottom of the table, can we take some teams out of the relegation zone, battle for spots potentially for European football next year, and a little bit of a smaller slate of games to dig into this week with 5 featured fixtures and 3 other games to go rapid fire with 4 teams not playing this week as the FA Cup semi-final showdowns get underway at Wembley this weekend as well. Jake, good to see you. How are things? And how did last week go for you?
Good, yeah, things all right over here. Decent weekend in the end. It started off really badly, obviously with the Newcastle Villa game not going my way, but it soon picked up. And I think the Brighton plus naught was a nice, comfortable winner in the end. They were by far the better team. The same with Crystal Palace at Spurs. Leicester grabbing a consolation, helped the both teams to score play. And then my big win was United win to 0, which was a plus 190. I was very confident about that bet just because of how bad Nottingham Forest have been in attack. And then we rounded off with absolute cracker of a match at Ellen Road. Only went for over 3 goals rather than over 5, which was a bit disappointing, but we'll take the profit.
Yeah. I had that, the United under. I was a little bit brash and bold last week trying to make a play in each and every game. I did get 5 right, so 50-50, but that included a couple plus plays. Go on, Aston Villa. I really backed them at plus 109 on the handicap. That went through. And the United underplay, because simply put, Nottingham Forest cannot score goals. And United have all kinds of problems finding the back of the net in their own right. So it was a decent week all around, not a great week. And looking into this week's schedule, I don't love the slate of games, to be honest with you. United, Brighton, Chelsea, Manchester City, none of those teams playing this week. I think that the bigger storyline is the pressure's starting to ramp up on Arsenal, isn't it? More drop points. Really familiar ways that the 2 games played out over the last 2 games for Arsenal. 2-2 draw with Liverpool and a 2-2 draw with West Ham. What do you make of Arsenal's title push? Should they still be considered favorites to go in and win the title? What is your data? What are your models telling you?
Yeah, well, the model is pretty much in line with what the futures are suggesting, which is that City are the favourites to win the title right now. And it's hard to kind of disagree. I mean, we're giving City a 67% chance of lifting the trophy now. Arsenal at the rest at 33. And yeah, they've had 2 incredible opportunities to keep City at arm's length. I mean, going 2-0 up in consecutive matches and then dropping effectively 4 points from that position is it's the kind of thing you look back on at the end of the season, and that's the kind of thing that decides titles. Fair enough at Anfield, you can kind of forgive them a little bit because Liverpool, when they get the tails up, they can score 3, 4, 5 if they want to, 7 in certain cases. But West Ham away, they'd not shown much at all. I mean, Newcastle had just gone there and absolutely destroyed them. And it felt like that result was going to repeat itself and also were 2 up after 10 minutes, but just went flat after that. And, there was talk over here from the pundits that they just got a little bit complacent, a little bit too overconfident, kind of shot themselves in the foot. So that there's definitely that comes into it. But either way, however you look at it, it's incredibly, I imagine, frustrating and disappointing for Arteta and the players that they've now, I mean, it's still in their hands technically, but they're comfortably second favourites in everybody's eyes. Obviously, the big game next week against Manchester City, which probably is going to decide it.
If you're an Arsenal believer, if you believe that they can go to the Etihad and come away with something in that game, and you believe that City with Champions League, we're recording this podcast before their game on Wednesday with the FA Cup. The futures play on Pinnacle, Arsenal plus 185 to win the title. That's the biggest number that has shown in quite some time. Man City, minus 227. What did I tell you on the podcast 2 weeks ago? If you're going to jump on City, do it now based upon the way that the fixtures played out. And these numbers pretty clearly show and back up Jake's model and what overall sentiment is at present time. The top 4 battle, it's interesting because on Pinnacle, there are 6 quote unquote contenders for their finals, for those final two Champions League spots, top 4 spots. Yet there's 12 points that separate those two sides. And what's interesting is Spurs right now, who sit 5th or 3rd in that pack of teams, are plus 650. Liverpool at plus 500 and Brighton at plus 400 with shorter odds. United just about locked in, just about pushing their way to the Arsenal City end of the spectrum at minus 899. Newcastle minus 300, and the outsider, the emerging side, Aston Villa plus 2488. What do you make of those numbers, and how are you looking at the top 4? We'll get into some of the schedules in terms of what our plays look like this week, but some of those numbers jump off the page a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's, I don't want to say done, but I think if Newcastle beat Tottenham this weekend, I think it's done. I think that's the top 4 for the how it's finishing. Just because realistically, they probably need to win 5 more matches, Newcastle, maybe even 4, because Brighton have got to play both Arsenal and City down the running. Liverpool have got an easier schedule than probably everybody else, but they've got a lot more ground to gain. Villa played a game more, 6 points back. I don't see them doing top 4. And Spurs are just performing like a team that should be mid-table as opposed to challenging for the top 4. And I do worry that Spurs could actually be a team that drops into maybe 7th and settles for the Europa Conference League spot. I did a video a few weeks back when Conte was sacked and Stellini was appointed. I just kind of had a deja vu feel of, was it 2-3 years ago when Mourinho was sacked and Ryan Mason was appointed, and that ended the season just fizzled out and they ended up finishing 7th. And I made the point on the video that it could actually repeat itself, that Spurs are playing that badly at the moment that they've got a points advantage at the minute, but it's not very big. I mean, Brighton have got 2 games in hand over Spurs. If they win both of them, they go above Spurs, and then all you need is Liverpool to carry on playing the way they are. I think Liverpool have got head-to-head with Spurs as well. So yeah, I'm not taking any plays at all in the top 4 market at this stage of the season. I think that the 4 best teams are currently up there, so happy to leave them where they are.
I might have a sprinkle. I might have a play. I'm trying to convince myself. Liverpool plus 500. I know that there are ways out. Newcastle has a difficult run in. Brighton has a difficult run in. Spurs are Spurs. Liverpool's remaining games: Nottingham Forest this week, West Ham, Spurs. Enough said. Liverpool home, Brentford home, Leicester City, Villa at home, Southampton. I mean, they have the easiest run-in out of any one of those, any group of those teams. They have a game in hand on Spurs. I think you're right. This weekend, Newcastle Spurs could have a big implication on the way that things go. I think I can convince myself that Liverpool could pick up enough points to push on and at least compete for a top 4 spot. At plus 500, is that enough? I haven't locked one in, Jake, but that's something that I'm absolutely considering. They're healthy now too, and their home form is unbelievable. Yeah. So
yeah, that does scare me a little bit, the home form. But away from home, I know they've just absolutely dominated Leeds, but they're so unreliable defensively. And I've just got Newcastle's schedule up, and it's not as bad as I actually thought. They've got Spurs, Southampton, Arsenal, and Leicester as their 4 remaining home matches, and you'd probably expect, I expect them to pick up at least 9 points there, maybe even 10 with a draw against Arsenal. And then away at Everton, away at Leeds, away at Chelsea. Leeds and Everton have not shown to be great shakes recently. Chelsea are just giving points away, aren't they? Frank Lampard is doing a great job there. So, that's kind of a... I think I feel a bit more comfortable now having looked at Newcastle's schedule that if they beat Spurs, then they are finishing the top 4. If they don't beat Spurs, I think we could see a little bit of pressure pile in and maybe a little bit of a wobble coming for Newcastle.
And really quickly on the relegation side of things, have we gone from this enormous pack of 8 or 9? Can we whittle it down to just 5? Because that's what the odds on Pinnacle are suggesting. Southampton odds on to go down minus 1298. Wow. Forest minus 375. I hate to say I've told you so, but man, I've been banging that drum for months now. Then there's Leicester City minus 110, Everton minus 100, so even odds, and Leeds United at plus 225. Everyone else has gone way out. Bournemouth plus 1,400, West Ham plus 1,600, Wolves plus 3,300. I'm not even going to touch on Palace or Chelsea who are listed because the odds are I think that
Chelsea are listed. That's good.
they're clear at plus 50,006. I don't even know how to say that number in terms of betting or gambling vernacular. But what do you make? Is that the way that you look at things? It's like a 5-horse race to the bottom.
I think so. Yeah. I think the fact that West Ham have got a game in hand probably is the reason why they are, as part of that bigger price section. But yeah, I think that they've definitely. I mean, looking at their schedule, it's hard to rule West Ham out. To be fair, at that big price at plus 1,600. I mean, they've still got to play Liverpool, Man City, and Man United in the running. They've got to go to Palace and Brentford, which is 2 tough games. They've got to go to Bournemouth. They'd probably prefer to have that at home. So yeah, maybe if you're looking for a small play, West Ham at plus 1,600. I mean, they might have, if they get through to the semi-finals of the Conference League, you've got more matches to play, etc., which could come into it. But yeah, they're probably the only team I would still include, just looking at the schedule. But yeah, I think there's every chance the bottom 3 stays as it is now. I mean, Nottingham Forest haven't shown me anything in the last 10 matches. In fact, they've been the worst team in the league across the last 10 fixtures. Leicester, they were half decent in the second half against City, but City did take everybody off at half time effectively. I think Southampton, they are as good as gone. I mean, I still cannot believe that they parted company with Ralph Hasenhüttl at the start of the season. That's still absolutely bonkers to me, and they're going to pay for it with Championship football next season. But yeah, Everton are the other interesting one, because I was quite not bullish, but I was quite confident that they would survive under Dyche, and the early underlying numbers were promising. But recently, there's been a real negative trend from a defensive standpoint. They're conceding a lot of chances, which is massively concerning. Yeah, they're the other team that I do fear for. And the same with Leeds. I mean, I've banged on for the last 3 or 4 game weeks now, just saying don't believe the hype when they were going through that really good run under Gracia early doors. And the wheels have well and truly fallen off. I mean, have they conceded a 4, 5, and a 6 in the last 4 matches? Just conceding left and right, which is obviously destroyed the goal difference advantage they had over teams down there as well. So yeah, I think the market's spot on in terms of whittling it down to 5. I would personally probably still put West Ham in there. Maybe they expect them to be a little bit shorter than what they are. But they have got more quality in that side than teams below them.
For me, Southampton's gone. Nottingham Forest are gone. Just their schedule is exceptionally difficult. Forest is they're in a lot of trouble here. But Leicester, Everton, Leeds, that's about it. I think that Leeds at plus 225. If you think it's not 5-horse race, it's a 3-horse race for one spot. Leeds based on form, your level of trust. I think that Leicester has more talent in their side, to be honest with you, and enough to kind of get out. And they have a favorable run of games over the next 4 weeks that if they can come away with something from those games, something positive, that they might be okay. So you can find all those odds on Pinnacle as we really get into the stretch run of the season.
We've got a podcast for the midweek round of fixtures next week, haven't we? And there's some big games there. I mean, just look at the 2 teams you just mentioned, Leeds and Leicester. They actually play each other next week in midweek, which is massive. So yeah, you don't want to miss that podcast.
All right, let's kick on to our feature 5 this week. And the first 2 games are going to have a similar theme. An overwhelming favorite taking on a struggling underdog that's most likely going down. And the lines will be similar, and potentially the plays might be similar for them as well. Let's start things off. Arsenal still top of the table against the cellar dwellers, a team that's simply incapable of anything right now in Southampton. First versus worst at this time of year can generally lead to bad things for the worst, especially when you're playing away from home at the side that's leading in the Premier League and a side that's desperate for a full 3 points. Arsenal 2-2 draws in back-to-back weeks at Liverpool, at West Ham, up 2-0 in both those fixtures. In the game on the weekend, 2.09 to 2.58 in terms of the XG. Similar themes. Arsenal giving up a lot of chances. Jesus, however, has scored in 3 straight games. William Saliba has been a big miss for this team. It just doesn't look right with Rob Holding coming in, just simply not the solution. On the plus side for Arsenal, they haven't lost in their last 4. No clean sheets in their last 5. They played to the over 2.5 in 8 of their last 9. Both teams have scored in each and every one of their last 5 games. They have been the first team to score in their last 7 games, and they've been the first half winner in their last 6. Arsenal have won their last 4 at home, scoring 3 or more goals in every one of those games. Southampton coming off a 2-0 loss to Crystal Palace and just a 0.8 XG in what was a must-win game. 3 straight league losses and no wins in their last 6 for the Saints. No clean sheet in their last 5. They played to the under 2.5 in 5 of 7 and have been the first to concede in their last 5. They still have to play Newcastle, Brighton, and Liverpool, in addition to Arsenal in their last 7 games. That's enough to just tell you that they will be relegated. 5 other teams have fewer than Southampton's 13 away points. It's been their home form that's been the biggest issue. And 4 away wins is actually more than Brentford, and the same amount of away wins on the season than Liverpool and Chelsea. That's just an incredible statistic for me. Head-to-head, they played to a 1-1 draw with Arsenal at St. Mary's earlier this season. Just wild stuff. 0.65 to a 1.65 XG in that game. And in this matchup between Arsenal and Southampton, they played to under 2.5 in 5 of 7. Now, the spread in this game is set for 2. And you can get Arsenal at the -2 goals, so they have to win by 2 or more, at -107. If they win by 2 exactly, it's a refund. The spread in this game, -528 for an Arsenal win, +653 for a draw, +1501 for a Southampton win. So the numbers, they're big to look at, and they maybe complicate things to a certain degree. So where do you go with this, Jake? Because clearly Arsenal, the vastly superior side, but is there a number? Is there a play on the board that has caught your eye?
Well, I had 2 plays in mind. One being, well, the first one that initially was just Arsenal to win to 0, which is at -113. I think I've said weeks and weeks and weeks now that Southampton's attacking process since Ruben Selles took charge has been horrendous. I mean, if you exclude the one-off against Spurs where they racked up 2.5 XG, they've averaged just 0.7 expected goals for per game across these matches, and that drops to 0.6 when playing away from home. And they've scored just once in 4 away trips. So initially, just anti-Southampton goals was the way I was going to play it. But then if you look at Arsenal's home form, they actually concede a lot when they play at home. They win a lot, but they also concede a lot. Leeds scored there, Palace scored there, Bournemouth scored twice. Obviously, City scored 3, Brentford scored there, United scored twice, West Ham scored there. So you've seen a theme that teams that go to the Emirates actually do get on the score sheet. So initially, that was my thinking, but I dismissed that because of that reason. And obviously, we've touched on it recently, Arsenal's defensive issues. They've definitely appeared much weaker since William Saliba's been out injured. So instead, I wanted to take Arsenal on the handicap. It's set at -2 the line, but I'm quite happy to take -1 3/4 at a shorter price. It's -140 for Arsenal, -1 3/4. So that basically means you get half a bet on Arsenal -1.5. So if they win by 2 goals, you get a winner at half win. If they win by 3 or more goals, you get a full win. So that's the play I'm going to make here. I just think that there's a massive gulf between the sides. I don't think Southampton are going to score, but I'm not that confident to pull the trigger on Arsenal win to 0. And if you look at Arsenal in against the bottom 9 sides at the Emirates, they've won 7 of 7. They've covered the -1.5 handicap in 6 matches of those 7, and they've won by 3 or more in 4 of those 7. So this generally is a bet that does go very close when they're playing against the worst teams in the league. And the process at home is just fantastic. 2.5 expected goals for per game, 1.0 expected goals against per game. So utterly dominant. I expect the same, and I think it could be quite a convincing victory. So starting with Arsenal on the handicap.
I like the play. I have a little bit of a different play. The first half hasn't been a problem for Arsenal. They've come out like a house on fire, scoring early goals. So let's make a first half play. Arsenal with the handicap in the first half. I'm going to move it to -1 at +123. So if they're up a goal at halftime, It's a push. If they're up by more than a goal at one through the first half, which they have been in recent weeks, you win your bet at a good plus number at plus 123. I said it. They went up 2-0 early in the first half against both Liverpool and West Ham in their last 2 games. They've been the first to score in their last 7 games, and they've been the first half winner in their last 6 games. Southampton have been dreadful, but they've been the first to concede in their last 5 games. So in terms of those trends, the way that these two teams play, what this game means, where the game is being played, all of it skews in Arsenal's favor. And for them to come out and have a statement start to this game after the little bit of a wobble with the City game in the not so distant future, I think that that's the best play on the board I could find. Arsenal first half -1 at plus 123. So I'm going to lock that in, a full play.
Yeah, they've started quick recently, haven't they, Arsenal? I think that bet that you've just quoted there, it's won in 3 of the last 7 and pushed in 3. So it's only lost once of the last 7 matches. So just to put some more perspective there, that they do start very fast. And yeah, hopefully for my sake, they can hold on to the lead this time.
Yes, no kidding. That game's going to be played on Friday night. So some Friday night football on your weekend schedule. Shall we move on to a game with a very similar theme and very similar lines, just in terms of the way the game is projected to play out? It's Liverpool and Nottingham Forest. Liverpool, an emphatic 6-1 win on Monday Night Football. Jurgen Klopp said it might have been Liverpool's best match of the season, best game of the season. That's saying something, considering some of the cracking wins that they've had this year over teams like Manchester United. But I guess the positive away performance is something that this team hasn't had, and it was long overdue. A 2.34 XG in that game after a 4.4 XG in the game prior against Arsenal. So the chance creation is off the charts for Liverpool right now. A Mo Salah brace in the game. He's up to 15 on the season and 4th best in the Premier League. If he can only finish penalties, then perhaps that number will be a little bit higher. Diego Jota, back, fit, firing. He scored a brace as well. Luis Diaz came on. A nice moment for him after 6 months on the sidelines with a knee injury. Liverpool haven't lost in their last 3, and they're still in the running for European football. Perhaps more the Europa League, although some people like me might consider them to still be in the Champions League mix. They have some significant ground to make up, but a favorable schedule coming home. 47 points is 3 points back of Aston Villa and 6 points back of Spurs, who are in 5th place, and they do have a game in hand. Liverpool's home form spectacular, 9-4-1, and they have the best XG of any other side, 37.5 in 14 games, according to Infogol. Nottingham Forest, my God, where do we begin? Back-to-back 2-0 losses at Villa, at home to United, 3 straight losses and no wins in their last 10, no clean sheets in their last 10. Although Keylor Navas hasn't been the problem, the goalkeeper's been very good. Both teams to scorers played in 5 of 7. They have an upcoming stretch of Liverpool, Brighton, at Brentford, at Chelsea, and Arsenal. Wow, that's a difficult run in 5 of their last 7 games. And a reminder that we do for every Nottingham Forest away match. They're dreadful. 1 win, 3 draws, 11 losses away. 5. That's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 goals scored, 36 conceded. Head to head, get this, much like the Arsenal story, Nottingham Forest came away with a result against Liverpool last time they played. Forest won 1-0. And the XG 2.44 to 2.52 in that game, all kinds of chances created. Much like the Arsenal Southampton match. The spread is set at -2 for Liverpool. Only comes in at -115, -527 for a Liverpool win, +668 for a draw, and +1427 for a Forest away win. So what do you make of this, Jake? Is there a number that stands out to you? It's a little bit of a mess, isn't it?
Yeah, these games are always tricky, aren't they, when you've got such a one-sided match on paper, on the odds. But I think there's some value to be had in backing Liverpool to win and both teams to score at +195. Obviously you don't have to keep talking, do we, about Liverpool's attack. They're absolutely flying at the moment. In fact, over the course of the season, they've averaged nearly 2.7 expected goals for per home game, which is actually the league best. So they're the best attacking team when playing at home. But defensively, they're just so vulnerable. I mean, they've allowed 1.74 expected goals against per game across the last 6, which is the kind of figure you'd expect to see from a Southampton or a Nottingham Forest. And they've conceded in half of their home matches as well. So it's not like they keep clean sheets at Anfield. Palace, Leeds, Southampton, and Leicester have all scored at Anfield already this season. All in defeats Leeds went there and won, didn't they? Palace drew, and Southampton, Leicester lost in both teams to score fashion. Forest, for me, it's just a question of can they score? Can they get on the score sheet? And I think that there's enough probably teething issues with the new system at Liverpool. There's also individual errors. There's the fact that they might overload looking for more goals, like we saw in midweek on Monday. But yeah, they've actually scored in 6 of the last 8 matches, Nottingham Forest, which does offer hope for this bet, and they should get some opportunities. But the defence is an absolute shambles, conceding 2.5 expected goals per game across the last 8 matches. So it could well be a cricket score kind of match again, like a 5-6-1 if Forest don't sort themselves out. But I do think that Forest will get on the score sheet. So I'm going to have a small play on a big plus number. Liverpool winning both teams to score, plus 195.
Bold for a team that's only scored 5 away goals in Forest on the season. I looked at that. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I was tempted.
I think
to
it's
play,
more to do with Liverpool's defense than Forest's attack. Is my angle really?
I got you, and they've looked a lot more solid. Trent Alexander-Arnold playing a little bit more of a progressive role in the midfield. I think that makes a whole lot of sense. So many teams are shifting to 3 at the back, to pushing that fullback into a low block midfield position like Trent Alexander-Arnold did against Leeds. A much better position for him where he doesn't need to mind his winger, and that's where Liverpool have regularly drawn out their center backs, and it's caused all kinds of chaos across their back line. So perhaps this is the way forward. I looked at Liverpool's goals. I looked at Liverpool to win to 0. If you like that play, it's minus 110 on Pinnacle. But I like my Arsenal play so much, I'm going to just, rinse, wash, repeat for Liverpool here. Liverpool on the handicap, the first half handicap, -1 at an even bigger number at plus 130. I think Liverpool, with the crowd at Anfield, I know it sounds cliche, but they've been so good at Anfield. It's been such a weapon for this team. Playing against a team that they lost against, some good vibes, players back, Klopp's happy. The team's as healthy as they've been all season long. I think they can come out and score a couple goals in the first half, to be honest with you. So give me Liverpool -1. If they're up by a goal at halftime, it's a push, but plus 130. Again, a decent plus number for a team that should run away with this game and win this matchup without too much resistance this week against Forest. So first half plays in back-to-back games. Also, the good part about first half plays on Pinnacle, it keeps up the options open for live betting after and throughout the match, depending on where it goes. So you can choose to hedge, you can choose to double up, whichever way you want to take it. But I love the first half plays for games like this when there is one team that's a pronounced favorite, and you look at the board and there might not be a whole lot there. If you dig a little bit deeper, there's plenty of options on Pinnacle, and this is the one I'm going to choose for both of these first 2 games. Not sure what your stats tell you about Liverpool and their starts, but I mean at Anfield, they've been absolutely brilliant. They've lost 1 game all season. That was the Leeds United, and it was one where they won the first half. It was 1-0, and Leeds pulled the rabbit out of their hat. I just can't see Nottingham Forest doing the same thing. This team's a nightmare right now.
Yeah, Forest are definitely struggling. Like I said, I could see this being a bit of a cricket score, but again, I know that they've looked good in match against Arsenal, match against Leeds, but it's 2 games. It's quite a small sample size. They still conceded 3 goals as well as scoring 8. But before that, what was it? Draw at Chelsea, which looks like a terrible result now. Lost at Manchester City, which is fair, but also lost at Bournemouth. So they're not carrying the best of form, which is why I was a little bit hesitant to go with Liverpool on the handicap and just thought I'd chance something a little bit bigger because, at smaller stakes, obviously, because it's a bigger price, but when there is such a big mismatch, you have to be really confident about the team covering the handicap. Because I'm not as confident as Liverpool covering this handicap as I am of Arsenal.
Right. Let's move on. A side that's now struggling a little bit, taking on the informed team in the Premier League, really, it's Brentford and Aston Villa. Brentford coming off a loss 2-0 at Wolves, 3 straight losses, 2 draws before that. Then I was seeing Thomas Frank on my Premier League TV doing studio commentary or studio analysis for the Leeds Liverpool game. So Tommy Frank getting out there. Wolves over the course of this span, or sorry, Brentford over the course of this span where they struggled a little bit, they have played Brighton, Manchester United, and Newcastle over that span. So just to take that into consideration, they haven't picked up a clean sheet in their last 5, and they played to the under 2.5 in 5 of their last 7. They're still 8th in the home table. It's legit their home form. 7-6-2, 29 goals scored, just 16 conceded, and they're 8th overall in the expected goal differential according to Infogol at home as well. Aston Villa, go on Villa. They're up to 6th after a 3-0 comprehensive victory against Newcastle. I don't know about you, Jake. I was having texts from family and friends and onlookers saying, wow, this Villa side looks very, very good. All the plaudits, deservedly so, going to Unai Emery, the way that he's helped turn this club around. Another impressive performance, a 1.93 XG to 0.67 in that game against Newcastle, a team that was on a roll in their own stead. 5 wins in a row for Villa, no losses in 8. They've been the first to score in 9 of 9 and clean sheets in 4 of their last 5 games. Ollie Watkins has scored 5 in his last 4 games, including a goal in every one of those games. He's up to 14 on the season. An early season projection by Jake Osgathorpe coming good. That look out for Ollie Watkins. Slow start, but he's caught fire here after the World Cup break. They've now moved up to being the 6th best away side. But it's a little bit off-putting because that's in terms of points. In terms of their expected goal differential, according to Infogol, minus 11.5 in that category, which puts them 16th overall in expected goal differential in the Premier League, and are 16 goals for and 21 against in 15 away matches. So they're pushing for European football, but they do have a tough upcoming schedule. United, Liverpool, they play their rival in Wolves away, and they also play Brighton and Spurs in the stretch run to the season. Head-to-head, Villa won this fixture 4-0 earlier this season, and the 3.48 XG that Villa put together in that game was the biggest of their season. Brentford, no clean sheet against Aston Villa in their last 3. So there's a couple different ways of looking at this, Jake. Brentford, do you back them to continue what has been a season of positive home form? Or have you seen enough from Villa where simply you can't bet against them right now?
Both those questions ring very true, and that's kind of why I've got no bet here. I got burned a little bit with Villa last week. I didn't make a pro Newcastle play, but I did expect Newcastle to win and to score, and Villa were just fantastic. So I think they deserve a bit of respect this weekend. This could be a potentially good game for them because Brentford have been well off it recently. Their recent form, obviously, the results have been bad. The performances have been really poor as well. Away at Wolves, they shaded the XG battle, but Wolves took an early lead in that one. Against Newcastle, they were okay, but again, 2 penalties they had, which actually bumped their XG up quite a lot. They were poor at Man United. They were really bad at Brighton, conceded 4.5 expected goals. And then against Leicester in the game before the international break, they were really iffy, lost the XG battle quite comfortably in that one, fortunate to get a point. So Brentford aren't playing at a very high standard right now, or not as high as what we've seen throughout most of the campaign. So this could potentially be a good time for Villa to play them. Villa are obviously red hot. Their performances are looking really sharp. Defensively, they're looking good as well, which I think is really impressive. But yeah, I've still not seen enough just yet. I know that they were really good against Newcastle. But I think I'm going to give them one more week before I start climbing on the bandwagon. I just think that price is a little bit short at plus 185 for a Villa win, especially given what we've seen from Brentford at home throughout the course of the season. I mean, if this game was played 2-3 months ago, you're probably getting Brentford at plus 110, maybe. Have Villa improved that much that they're now plus 157 Brentford? Probably not. So I'm happy to just leave this one alone for the time being.
Yeah, I have to back Brentford in this game. I mean, they've been so good to us in terms of their home form, and the away form of Aston Villa. Although they've been picking up points, they've hardly played any world beater over this stretch. Like winning at Chelsea, I know Chelsea's just they're not themselves, and playing Leicester City. Like this recent run of away games have all come against teams that you'd think that they would beat if they're going to be contending for European football. But that minus 11.5 in expected goal differential just jumps off the page for me. And that hasn't changed for months. Like that hasn't changed under Unai Emery. And you pointed out last week that some of the numbers that you were digging into, some of the data when it came to Villa showed that they've been overachieving to a certain degree. Not to take anything away from them. Like, this recent run of form has been outstanding, but perhaps, they're not as strong as kind of what the results have been leading on. Brentford remains a very good home side. They played some good teams over this stretch. I'm not going to go a full Brentford win bet here, but I think this is a good time to make the Brentford draw no bet play at minus 117. If it's a draw, you get your money back. Could very well end up in a draw. If not, it's a little bit of a market correction game where Brentford gets things back on the track. They've been too good. There isn't injuries. There's no real good reason for this dip of form. Perhaps just the schedule playing out with some difficult games over that stretch. So let's go Brentford draw no bet at minus 117 and hope that they recapture that magic. 29 goals scored, 16 against. That's not a fluke at this stage of the season. They've been very competitive there, and they're not really playing for anything. They're not playing for European football. They're a mid-table team. It's like games like this, you want to do something for the home fans, and generally at this time of the year, the away form might dip for sides like Brentford. But the home form, I still think it'll be up there. And I'm expecting them to come out and try to right some of the wrongs that have kind of played out over the last few weeks. So Brentford draw no bet at home at minus 117. Anything to add, or do you want to move on to the next game?
Yeah, let's move on.
It's a big one. Newcastle and Spurs, 4th versus 5th in the Premier League table. Newcastle, a little bit of a setback after that 3-0 loss to Aston Villa. It was their 3rd straight away game in a row. I warned about that last week. It was a difficult end to a run of games for Newcastle, and perhaps that played out in a little bit of a predictable way. No clean sheets in their last 3. Newcastle played to over 2.5 in 5 of 6. Their last home game was a big 2-0 victory over Manchester United, and they put up a 3.18 XG in that game. The home form has been very good on the balance of the season for Newcastle. 8-5-1. Their lone loss to Liverpool, Nick Pope was sent off, played a man down. 23 goals scored, 9 against at home. 9 conceded at home is the second fewest at home. And they also have the second best record in terms of expected goals against, according to Infogol. St. Maximin is still out. Other than that, Almiron came back into the team last week. Spurs, wow. 3-2 home loss to Bournemouth. Wow. 2.45 to a 1.1 XG, but they weren't convincing in the game, were they? They were lucky against Brighton at home the game before that as well. And back-to-back draws against Southampton and Everton before that. Basically, this team isn't very good. No clean sheet in their last 5. They played to over 2.5 in 4 of 5. Both teams to score has played in 5 of 5. And Spurs have been the first to score in their last 5 games. This is a defining stretch of Spurs season, and it starts this weekend. Newcastle, then they play Manchester United, then they play Liverpool. This will determine where they play, whether it's in the Champions League, Europa League, or even below that. If you want to talk about how average this team is away from home, 5-5-5, 24 goals scored, 25 against. It pretty much says it all. Head-to-head, Newcastle won this fixture at Spurs. It was a 2-1 final. In this fixture, both teams to scorers played in 6 of 6, and they played over the 2.5 total in 5 of 6. All right. Arguably the biggest fixture of the weekend, Jake. Which way are you leaning?
I'm definitely leaning Newcastle. Without hesitation, I'm backing Newcastle to win. I think there's a massive gulf between these two teams right now. I mean, I think I've banged on since the restart about how bad Spurs have been. I was very keen on them at the start of the season, and they started off all right, and then for whatever reason, around the World Cup break, just before and straight after, took an absolute nosedive, and they've not really recovered since. So they're a team that has to be taken on pretty much every week. And last week it was with Bournemouth. This week it's Newcastle, and it just so happens to be Newcastle are the second best home team in the league based on the underlying data. They're majorly disappointed last weekend, deservedly beaten, like you said, 3 straight away games. So this home match could be just a tonic to get them back on track. It's a great opportunity to get that loud, noisy crowd behind them, get a victory. And like I said at the top of the show, I think if they win this, I won't say they're a surefire thing to get in the top 4, but they're pretty close. I think this is basically win or bust for Tottenham. If Tottenham lose this, I think their top 4 chances are done. So it's quite a high stakes game. So yeah, I think that Newcastle have got enough to be able to come out on top. I mean, you mentioned there defensively, they conceded 9 in 14 when playing at home, and 5 of those came against Man City and Liverpool. So they conceded 4 goals in the other 12 home matches, which is an incredible record. The process 2.4 expected goals for per game, 1.0 expected goals against per game. So it's pretty much in line with what we saw, what discussed with Arsenal in the first game that we covered. Is just to put in perspective how good and how impressive they've been. And yeah, Spurs, they've been the 10th best team in the league since the restart, according to expected goals. Away from home since the World Cup break, 1.3 expected goals for, 1.6 expected goals against, which is, again, 10th best in the league. So not good at all. It just seems to be the same old, doesn't it? I mean, Conte's gone, but you've kept a Conte disciple in Stellini, who's got them playing exactly the same manner of football. It's boring. It's slow, it's uninventive, it's very, very passive at times as well. So not very positive about Tottenham at all. And yeah, this is a great opportunity for Newcastle to pretty much slam the door on Spurs from a top 4 perspective.
Yeah. Newcastle win at -119. I'm happy to make that play. I'd also consider Newcastle over 1.5 goals scored at -113. Look, like Spurs went away a couple of weeks ago and conceded 3 against Southampton. How many are they going to concede at Newcastle, a team that's played over 2.5 in 5 of their last 6 games? Spurs defensively are an absolute shambles. So I'll lock in the Newcastle to win, but I'm tempted to play the over the goal total of 1.5 for Newcastle as well. Either or for me. I can see goals being scored in this game. -113. It's a little bit better, but it's a little bit too close. I'm more confident on a Newcastle win. But
I think if Newcastle win, they score more than once.
That's what I think.
For sure,
that's kind of my lean. So I might end up locking in a play there as well. Something to think about. But I think we're both leaning the same way here. The same thoughts on this game. Newcastle at home has been absolutely cash. They've been money this year. Spurs, the way that they're tracking right now, you simply can't back them. I can't see a way, but who knows? We'll see how it plays out. Yeah. But backing Newcastle.
I wouldn't put anyone off backing Newcastle -1 on the Asian handicap as well at +156. Everyone watched what Newcastle did to Man United, in which they covered the handicap. They were excellent on that occasion, racked up loads and loads of chances. And Spurs, when they've travelled to what you would call, well, what I've called the 3 best home teams in the league in terms of Arsenal, City, and Newcastle. The Arsenal covered the handicap against Spurs, 1-3-1, City 1-4-2, and Newcastle are kind of hitting those kind of levels as well. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if Newcastle won by a couple of goals here. So just another one, slightly bigger price to throw in the mix.
So neither one of us phased by the loss last weekend for Newcastle, and we'll move forward with them this weekend. The final game of our feature 5, it's played on Sunday. And a big game just to kind of create separation for one of these two sides from the rest in the relegation pack. It's like win and you stay up game at Bournemouth this weekend as they play West Ham United. Bournemouth, they're rewarded for some real progress, and there has been under Gary O'Neill in the last few weeks with a 3-2 win at Spurs, back-to-back wins for Bournemouth, and 3 wins out of their last 4. Pretty incredible. A side that's a little bit limited, maybe punching above their weight, but it played really well over the last few months. They have, however, been the first to concede in 4 of their last 5 games. It's a key game for Bournemouth because they're on 33 points. They can stretch out that 6-point gap between them and the pack in the relegation zone. They've been good at home. 5 wins, 4 draws, 6 losses on the season, 15 goals scored, 19 against. However, they are they are in the bottom 4 in terms of home expected goals against, according to Infogol. West Ham, they'll be motivated, inspired by a 2-2 draw with Arsenal after being 2 goals down, a 2.09 XG in that game as well. They're up to 31 points and they're up to 15th in the table. Same thing goes. A win here, they create that separation from the rest. They have only picked up 9 points away from home. Only Nottingham Forest has fewer away points than West Ham. 2, 3, and 9. 8 goals scored. That's it. And 20 conceded in 14 games. But, and this is the big one, they're 7th in terms of expected goal differential away from home. So not being rewarded for their efforts. A lot of that has to do with their defensive play. It's been good away from home. Their attacking processes have been dreadful. Head-to-head, West Ham won this fixture 2-0 earlier this season, 2.2 XG to just a 0.93. Bournemouth hasn't picked up a clean sheet in their last 4 against West Ham. So what goes down here at the Vitality? Who are you backing in this game?
I don't actually have a play in this one. This is the other game, along with the Brentford Villa game, where I don't have a play. I think I respect Bournemouth enough not to be quite bullish on West Ham to win. Bournemouth have shown us plenty, as you mentioned, over the last couple of weeks, and West Ham they've got that solid backbone. I mentioned them as a potential long shot, just given the schedule, but I would be surprised if they went down. Obviously, this is a game comes after a quarterfinal second leg in Europe. The second leg is at home though, which does mean that there's less travel time. But yeah, there was just nothing that took my fancy at all here. I could see it being high scoring. I could see it being low scoring. I could see either outcome. So I'm quite happy to just leave this alone.
I'll go Bournemouth draw no bet at plus 102. A little bit better than even odds. I think this game potentially has draw written all over it. If that's the case, you get your money back. Every time I watch West Ham, I'm not a believer in this team. They've been horrible. They've been one of the biggest underachievers in the Premier League this season. And they also play Ghent in the Conference League on Thursday night. Bournemouth are playing really well right now. They may concede some goals, but they're playing competitive football. So I'll give the slight edge to Bournemouth, making the draw no bet at a plus number, a reasonable play for me to make. Let's go rapid fire for our final 3. Fulham and Leeds. What do you make of this fixture, Jake?
Well, I have a feeling that we're going to be on the same lines here. Just looking at the line, minus 110 for over 2.5 goals. Yes, please. That will do. Fulham have kind of got back to their free scoring selves from the early part of the season. The overs has landed in 4 of the last 5. They've conceded over 2.3 expected goals against per game in that time. They're extremely vulnerable. And then speaking of vulnerable, Leeds have shipped, like I said before, 4, 5, and 6 in the last 4 matches. Granted, you've played Arsenal and Liverpool, but Crystal Palace put 5 past them. And since Gracia took charge, they've conceded over 2 expected goals as well. So overs landed in 6 straight for Leeds. They'll see this as a winnable match, which means I think they'll keep the same approach in terms of trying to be quite proactive and attacking. And that should leave plenty of goals. I was surprised the line wasn't 3 on this, to be fair.
That's what I was going to ask you. What do you make of that? The exact same play. Fulham no clean sheet in 6. Leeds no clean sheet in 8. Head-to-head, the over 2.5 is played in 5 of 7. It was 3-2 the fixture earlier this year with a 2 XG to a 2.52 XG. Everything screams the over. So how do you explain where the number's sitting right now? Because this has to be the best bet of the week.
Yeah, I'm not too sure why it's so low. Why we're at 2.5. Like I said, if it was 2.75, I would probably understand it a bit more.
Right.
But
Me too.
yeah, I just wonder if it's maybe the market thinking that Gracia, after conceding bucket loads in the last 4 matches, is going to tighten things up a little bit. They could well be right, but at the end of the day, the defenders that they've got there are just not good enough. They're missing key players. Like Tyler Adams is a huge player in midfield. He's out, so
Wilbur.
yeah, Verber. I think he might be back for this one. He was with the squad on Monday, but again, do they risk rushing him back when they've got Leicester in midweek? Yeah, I'm very surprised. And Fulham are just playing with freedom right now. We've got nothing to play for. They're not going to get into Europe. They probably have a small goal of finishing above Chelsea, as daft as it sounds. They're 3 points above Chelsea right now with the game in hand. I think if they could finish above Chelsea, that would be that's probably what they've got their target set at for the rest of the season, which means that they'll still be playing, for wins effectively rather than just coasting. So yeah, very surprised at the line, but I'm happy to take it because I would take that bet 10 times out of 10 if you offer me that price.
We're united in the over. Potentially the next game screams under as it's Palace and Everton. Do you have a play in this game?
Yeah, I'm going to take Roy's side to win again. They're flying at the moment. Plus 110. It's the kind of price I would expect to see from Crystal Palace of last season in terms of when they were flying, they were performing like a top half team, and effectively that's what they're performing like right now. They've 3 wins from 3 against relegation threatened teams. They've soundly beaten all of them. 2.4 expected goals for per game, 0.7 expected goals against per game in those 3 matches. So Hodgson's got them playing. They're only 3 points behind Chelsea. I think again that might be a small target that they have for themselves, is to finish above Chelsea. I'm not picking on Chelsea, but it's very rare that you see them in the bottom half and vulnerable. And these kind of teams would probably take that as a huge win to finish above them. Everton winless in 4, conceding a lot of chances, as I mentioned before. 1.9 expected goals against per game since Dyche took over. Away from home, it's actually 2.3. So they are really, really poor when travelling. And granted, they play some tough away teams. They played at Liverpool, they played at Arsenal, at Chelsea, at Man United. But the way in which Crystal Palace are playing, the number of chances they're creating, the freedom with which Eze and Elise are playing right now, I do fear for Everton. I think it could be quite a long game for them. So I was quite happy to take Palace to win again at plus 110.
Half play for me, I'm kind of going the other direction. Head-to-head, Everton won this fixture 3-0 earlier this year. I think it'll be a pain in the you-know-what to play. Market correction time, but I'm going to go Everton with the spread at plus half a goal. So an Everton win or a draw, you have a winning play at minus 121. This game has the shortest odds, by the way, to finish in a draw this week. And that's exactly where I think it may end up. And a draw, good enough, good for me, good for a win there. So a half play Everton on the handicap. And finally, Leicester City and Wolves, a rivalry game of sorts, a little bit here. Leicester City, I mean, this is must-win territory. They're starting a stretch where they play Wolves, Leeds, Everton, and Fulham as their next 4. This stretch will define whether they stay up or not. So do they get off to a winning start here over a stretch of games where it doesn't look that daunting for the Foxes?
It's a good opportunity for sure. I was just quite happy to see the goal line fairly low. I think it might be maybe not super high scoring, but I could see over 2.5 coming in. But I actually like both teams to score in this at minus 113. Both teams to score in 5 of Leicester's last 6, and their problem all season has been defensively. They still create plenty of chances. Like you said, they'll view it as a very winnable game against a team on the fringes of a relegation battle now. So, a win for Leicester, does it pull Wolves back into it? Maybe a little bit. But yeah, Wolves away from home under Lopetegui, both teams to score in 6 of 8, and they've conceded 1.7 expected goals against per game when travelling. So I could see chances at both ends. I don't think either team will be pulling any punches.
This is my no bet for me of the week. Away, just 2 away wins for Wolves in upcoming away games against Brighton, United, and Arsenal. Like, if they don't pick up points here, where are they picking them up? Away from home down the stretch. And they need to pick up a couple more results in order to just ensure their safety. I'm not sure how this one will play out, so I'm going to stay away from this one entirely. So that's our board for the week. Remember, The odds are correct at the time of recording, and please gamble responsibly. We'll be back next week, not only with the UCL blueprint, as we'll know our semifinalists for the Champions League, but some big midweek fixtures in the Premier League as well to dig into as well. And when you're on Pinnacle, Stanley Cup playoffs are up and running. The NBA playoffs are up and running. All your best odds are available on Pinnacle. Best of luck this week, Jake. Thank you very much. Great work as always.
Likewise, yeah. Let's have some goals and some winners.
Not so much of the unders this week, but
No,
some
not at
compelling
all.
different plays on the board. And we hope that you play along as well. On behalf of Jake and everyone at Pinnacle, I am Gareth Wheeler. This has been EPL Insights with data provided by Infogol.